All right, welcome to another episode on the podcast for affordable housing and real estate investing. Today, I got one of my best friends, my partner, Wilson Bang, on this podcast, on this episode. And today, we're going to learn about his story, why he decided to invest with us and invest in real estate investing. So, Wilson, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Thanks, Ken. As Ken introduced, Wilson Bang, from Boston, grew up, born and raised in Boston, big Boston sports guy. Everybody knows all of them: Celtics, Red Sox, Patriots, every single one of them. And I guess for this podcast, real estate investor, partner with Kent, got an Airbnb in Arizona. My own primary residence here in Boston as well. So I'm born, raised, and staying here as well. Good to talk to you guys. Share my story.
Dude, I love that. Wilson, I really wanted to bring you on first because I think the most important question I will have for you today is probably a question about mindset. We all grew up in a similar group of friends. We all came from low income housing. We all went to public schools. And growing up in that environment, you are probably in an environment where people tend to kind of follow the same path, where you go to college, you get a stable job, you have a family, have kids, and then you retire, right? But you and I decided to branch out and actually invest in real estate. Like, tell me a little bit more about what the hell was going on in your brain when you decided to, like, yeah, I'm going to invest with Kent in real estate. Like, what was going on through your head? Were you scared at all?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So I guess, like you mentioned, right, we're first generation, right? Parents came from Asia, right? They landed in Boston. This is where they kind of got their life started. There's no kind of real playbook to make money, right? But that's kind of what a lot of these immigrant families are, right? They try to get you to the best schools possible. Then when you go into school, they're gonna work as hard as you can, help you with homework, all that stuff. And then you go to college, right? That's kind of the career path, right? You go to college, get a nice degree. Hopefully it's not like a degree that doesn't get you a job, something, how it is, accounting, right? You got business, you got doctors, lawyers, dentists, whatever it is, whatever kind of the immigrant families think makes money. And then you work as hard as you can in the corporate life, in college, and then you get a job, whether it's in corporate, if you're in business, you go to a dentist, you go to law school, whatever it is. So that's kind of the playbook that a lot of these parents or immigrant parents are trying to kind of instill on their kids. And so I kind of followed that. And then as I kind of got out of college, got into the corporate life, do consulting now, do management consulting. And then, that's when Kent, right, came through and said, hey, I'm trying to do this real estate deal right now. This is kind of what my focus is on. And so, he gave me a nice long sales pitch, right? You hit all the nice points, right? This is what we're gonna do, right? This is what I'm working hard on. This is how we're gonna make money, stuff like that. And so that's kind of where it came through. And definitely scared, right? I mean, we did this in 2021, right? Right during 2020. 2021, right?
COVID, yeah, just a year ago.
Right during COVID, everything's kind of, nobody knows what's going on. It's a big uncertain time. And so of course you're going to have these uncertainties around, investing, what you're going to do with your money, what happens if I lose my job, that type of stuff. And so, you're always going to have that feeling of uncertainty and fear and stuff like that. And I felt like, when I talked to you, you did a great job of kind of selling yourself and then selling the business and selling the idea as well. And so that's kind of where I came in. We took the risk, right? And I think it paid off really well. And, definitely a great risk in my mind, in terms of what we did with the real estate, with the property.
I mean, that's so nice of you to say that. I pitch you well, man. Because honestly, let's be honest, right? It was my first deal. I had no idea what I was doing. And I remember when I analyzed the property for you, we were estimating our gross revenue to be about $90,000.
Yep.
Right now, it's on track for $170,000, which is almost double what that scenario was going to be. It's crazy. It is absolutely insane to think like how far we have come together as a partnership, and to think about just getting over that initial hump. Because let's be honest, right? I'll be very honest with you. If you said no, it would have been a no. And I'm not sure if I ever told you this, but like on the day when our offer got accepted, dude, I was so nauseous. Like I was getting ready to throw up that night. I could not eat that night because I was so nauseous, man. Because I was literally terrified. And the reason why we got the offer is like we were trying to buy an ugly house. It was like a dude's house, right?
Hmm.
Dumbbells outside, fallen over fire pit, a little batting cage, like rusted dumbbells outside, just a very, very ugly dude's house with no staging,
Yeah,
what you would
bugs
typically see as
everywhere. Bugs everywhere.
right, and
We
bugs
yeah,
everywhere.
me and my fiance showed up. Me and my girlfriend at the time, and then right afterwards, my fiance, and now my wife. Not my wife,
Hey,
but yeah, we showed up. I mean, we were there for a week. There was like 30, 40 bug bites. It was insane. But yeah, it's
so
like a dude's house.
right,
No,
no one tells you about these things when you buy a house. Like, who told you? Like, oh, it's not just the pictures. You also get mosquito bites. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
getting hammered by mosquitoes the entire time. But that's so funny, man. It's crazy how far we've come, and I'm never gonna let you forget that you could have said no. And I'm never gonna let you forget that, man. You could have said no, dude. You could have said
yeah,
no, and I appreciate that so much. And I want to get to the next question of like, why did you invest with me? And this is not a plug for me. It's more of a I want people to understand what are you looking for in a person when you want to invest with somebody,
yeah.
right? Like I'm sure I'm not the first guy that said to you, whether it's a drunken conversation, where like, hey, let's go start a business together, right? What made you actually want to invest with me, and what would you recommend for other people to look at in other partners?
Yeah. Yeah, I think with investments, right? You think about like your stocks, your bonds, these investments. You're doing the research yourself, and then you're kind of let's say you're buying Apple, right? You're doing your research on
Mhm.
Apple. It's a good company, right? That's got all this cash and stuff like that. So you're kind of doing the same thing, right? You're doing the same thing, same exact thing with real estate, right? You're looking at the market, right? For us, it was Arizona, right? You're looking at
Mhm.
the market, you're looking at the growth, you have that side of it. And then on the other side of it, right, I'm investing in you, right? You can't he, right? So
Mhm.
you got to do your research with that's both sides, right? You do your research on the real estate, right? All of this stuff that we just
Mhm.
mentioned, but
Mhm.
then I'm also doing research on you too, right?
Mhm.
You have to sell yourself to me, right? You're managing the
Mhm.
property, you're managing my money. I'm putting all my risk and
Mhm.
my financial stability, right? Whether I'm having stakes or I'm having, not
Yep.
like not stakes or spam, right? That's kind of
Yep.
on you. So right. So I'm doing my research on you. So you're coming at me. This is how you're going to do it step by step. This is what's going to happen when we have a great year. This is what's going to happen when we have a bad year. This is what happens when we have a recession. So kind of
Mhm.
going through that list of items of, this is what is going to make from you, right? This is what's going to make my partner Wilson comfortable, and
Mhm.
that's what you did. And I think that you did a great job on that piece of it.
Yeah, and I love that because I think too often sometimes people only talk about the best case scenario, right?
Mhm.
And if you don't spend time up front talking through the worst case scenario, like one of our worst case scenarios was like, okay, what if another COVID happens and no one books the home for 2, 3, 5 months, 6 months, right? Our exit strategy would have been, okay, let's turn it into a furnished rental for affordable housing so we can actually do good with our property. But at the minimum, like our mortgage at that time was 3,500, right? Roughly speaking. And if the whole house sat empty, our worst case is not losing $3,500 a month. It's
Yeah.
actually losing about $1,000 a month because you can easily rent it out to a Section 8
Mhm.
household, and there's a huge wait list for them. So your only max loss is about $1,000 a month, and we had to have the honest conversation. Okay, if we lose $1,000 a month, are we both okay with reaching into our pocket to cover expenses for $500 a month? And the great thing about real estate is like no matter how bad the recession is or how bad the economy is, eventually it does rebound. People do travel again at one point or another. And that's why I was so comfortable with it because not only was inflation going out of control then, like 8%, right? I think that's the going inflation rate. Our money was losing money. It's sitting in the bank. So we had to put it again somewhere. And thankfully we decided to pick real estate. And thankfully we decided on a niche that actually made sense.
Mhm.
So another thing I wanted to call it is track record. And I think for someone looking to invest in another investor, and like you said, right, you're investing in a person at the end of the day because the person is going to control exactly what's going to be the outcome of your deal. If you just write an analysis and put on a spreadsheet, that doesn't mean it's going to come to fruition. Someone actually needs to make it happen.
Hmm.
right? Somebody actually needs to execute on the property. And just like you work in consulting, you know how important execution is. So what in my track record do you recommend, like not my track record, but like in a partner track record, what are you looking for? What would you suggest to someone looking to invest in real estate for the first time? Like what are the qualities in a person that you're looking for?
I think you just have to be active. I think the sales pitch, right, is kind of the big piece, and just kind of going back to the worst case scenario, right? You got to have
Mm-hmm.
somebody that's willing to kind of have that difficult conversation,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're trying to sell an investor on your services, right? You kind of it can't be all good, right? It's if you have
Mm-hmm.
all good, that's unreason that's impossible, right? That's not something that can happen. So having somebody that's able to kind of have that tough conversation of this is what happens in the worst case scenario, that's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a big piece of it, right? So having that, like I said, having that conversation. When things are good, everything's good. But when things get bad, if you haven't had that kind of that bad,
Mm-hmm.
that worst case scenario conversation, then you're just going to get into an argument. So I think that's a big piece of it. I think just
Mm-hmm.
with you, right? You're reaching out, you're doing all this research. I think being able to have all of this data, right? All the data points, right? I think that was a big piece of it, right? You came through, you said, hey, this is the property or this is the area that we want to invest in,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether it's say Arizona, or, North Carolina, whatever it is. These are the properties, or this is the area that we want to invest in. These are the key data points, right? Growth,
Mm-hmm.
right? Things like that, laws, whatever it is. Having all those data points, and then also doing comparables as well, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have your Airbnbs. These are the lists. And I think one of the things that you did that was awesome was this is the list of, you know, 200 whatever, right? Oh, not 200, but like 100 or whatever properties that
Mm-hmm.
are in that vicinity, right? That we are going to compare against, right? When people open
Mm-hmm.
up Airbnb or when people open up their own kind of VRBO, whatever it is, you're pretty much stacked against all of these properties, and
Mm-hmm.
so by having that, just showing, hey, I did the research already. This is the property. This is 5 miles from our spot.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same kind of square footage. They have a pool. We don't have a pool. Whatever it is, just
Mm-hmm.
being able to have that data point, right? It's you're showing I guess you're showing what your research is and how hard you're working and how much you're doing on the side, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're working weeks and weeks to gather all this data, right? Whatever it is, months,
Mm-hmm.
but then you're coming in and we're just having a 2 hour conversation, and that's your sales pitch. So being
Yeah.
able to kind of, for me, being able to see all the work you put behind it to get you to that
Mm-hmm.
point, and then I'm just getting the best 2 hours, right, of your research for a month. So that's I would say the big piece.
Dude, that is such a good advice for anyone. And I talked to you about this before, right? I think raising private capital is probably the hardest skill. Like I think anything else you can do in real estate, you can learn to manage a contractor, but raising private capital, making someone feel comfortable with
Mhm.
giving you their money, like you're literally
Their
reaching into their
hard-earned
pocket.
money.
It's like,
Yeah, they're
yeah,
working.
right?
People are working for this money. That's their hard-earned money. So
Yeah.
being able to sell yourself and get that.
And you have to respect it. And that's why I never inundated you with like how much research I was doing. I literally came to you when I felt like I had thought through the entire thing. And then I asked you for your opinion. Right.
Mhm.
And I think that gets lost in so many sort of new investors where they just want to like, hey, look at this house, let's buy it. Right. I've been pitched those deals all the time. Like they just send it over like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Instead of going through the extra step and just actually saying, hey, here's a property I looked at. This is what I think it'd make, and these are the
Yeah.
reasons why. And if it doesn't work, then this is what we're gonna do. So many people don't take those extra couple of steps, and we see this in corporate America all the time in the consulting careers when we used to do it. People don't take the extra step. So
Yeah.
it's crazy that to expect someone to give you their money when you haven't shown that you have demonstrated such care for taking care of the money and helping them and respecting that, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, I
uh,
can easily go on Zillow, right, and look up a house that's $1 million, 2,000 square feet, and look at the price per square feet, and say, hey, I think this
mhm,
is a good deal. Take a look at it, right? There's no work in the background. You didn't do anything really other than, you looked at one data
mhm,
point. Price per square feet is under a certain amount of money. I think it's investable.
yeah,
That's not really doing research at all, and that's not going to
yeah,
give anybody comfort in
yeah.
kind of your abilities to kind of work and do this
Mhm.
stuff in the back end in the
Yeah.
background.
Yeah, and I love that the way you evaluate me is like, you and I have a relationship since 8th grade. We've been best friends since like 8th grade. It's crazy how long that's been. And there have been times in my career where I have not been successful, right? So you and I know, like I used to run a restaurant for my cousin because it was losing $20,000, $30,000 a month.
Yeah.
And if I didn't step in and save them from bankruptcy, then he would have gone bankrupt, right? So that's, I think, looking for the type of person you're investing in is the trait that I will call out is grit. Like, do you keep pushing when it's hard? Do you keep pushing when things aren't going as well? And when things aren't going as well, what are you doing to kind of make up for the deficiencies in the business, right?
Yeah.
And I would say like, hey, my restaurant endeavor was not successful. I didn't make any money from it, but I also didn't lose any money from it. And at the end of the day, it was a good year or two of my life where I just spent all the time and I turned it around, right? Got it back to break even. But at the end of the day, that wasn't the life for me. And I think learning about your investors' track record and what have they done during difficult times is also going to be so important. I'm not sure like if that factored in your decision, like, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the learning about the I guess the question is what am I looking for when I'm learning about an investor or a partner?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if that's the question, I think well, I know you, right? So it's easy to see, but I feel like when you meet somebody for the first time, or you meet somebody, especially even at work, if you're meeting somebody as an investor, whatever it is, right? You can kind of see the work that they're put in, right? Are they, we're all consultants, right? Do we just hit on the keywords, right? Profit, whatever it is, right? Gains, whatever the keywords are, right? But that's not that you can't really kind of assess somebody based on these keywords, right? You meet somebody, you talk to them, you understand, are they a hard worker or not? I think a lot of people can assess that, right? You can kind of see through the fluff, and you can see through the candy coating and all that stuff to be able to see hard work. And if you don't, maybe it's time to ask some questions, right? And, it is a two-way street when you're looking at investors, right? They're kind of selling themselves, but then you have to also kind of ask the questions to generate that response as well, right? What are if what I'm looking for is somebody that's going to work as hard, work night and day, whatever it is, then you can ask questions around like, what do you do? How do you do your research, right? It's an interview back for the person as well. How do you do your research? What do you do? What are the sites that you're looking at? What are the different data points that you're pulling together? Being able to show that research, right? If that's what you're looking for in an investor, somebody that is able to do the hard work, someone that has that kind of, especially with you, right? It's not like you have that track record for real estate. This is the first property that we've done, right? So really, I'm investing in you as a hard worker, as somebody that's willing to do that nitty-gritty stuff, right? To go in and do that research and be able to present that to me or to new investors, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think just you got to invest in someone that's willing to figure it out, right? I think that's a skill that you can't really teach. You can learn as much from books as possible, but you can learn as much from podcasts as possible. But you got to go in and do it, and then you figure things out as it happened, right?
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Some of the crazy stories that we run into is like, look, in January, the neighbors called the police on our guests.
Yeah, that's brand new experience for us, first time.
In January, that was scary. We just launched, so I was like, oh man, like what we're gonna do? And we had to have a conversation where I was like, all right, let me try this no music outdoors policy. And that could have gone very differently. So we actually implemented the policy. We actually reached out to all of our bookings that were actually in place already and told them like, hey, our neighbors are very sensitive to noise, but we actually are going to be respectful neighbors and responsible hosts and actually implement no music outdoors policy. We had a few cancellations, maybe about 20% of reservations canceled, but then all the other people stayed. And on top of that, they actually got rebooked, which was amazing, right? And what did we learn in that process? We learned that if we elevate our standards for our guests, we actually invite less problems into our business. And we actually are continuing to be responsible hosts and be a respectable neighbor in a neighborhood so that people don't actually hate us as hosts, right? Because the last thing you want is having a party house next door to your home. Like nobody wants that.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable, right? I think that would be kind of conversations that we would have as partners, right? What is reasonable versus unreasonable, right? So being able to say, no music outside. I mean, everybody who's lived, next door to somebody, right? They don't want music outside, right? Not everybody shares the same music taste as you, right? And you don't kind of want that outside as well. So I think it was a very reasonable ask, and I think that worked out well. the 20% cancellations, I think, that's cancellations, but they get rebooked, right? And it's not
Mm-hmm.
like it's going to affect, our kind of the house, the whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't affect the reviews or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
saying you guys can't party outside, just have loud music. And I feel like that's very reasonable as a request.
Yeah. So I love this conversation about how we work together as partners, right? Because so many people don't actually think through all these decisions. And I want to speak to a little bit about like when you and I first started talking about a partnership. The first thing that we did, it wasn't creating LLC, which is what a lot of people waste their time doing. Our first goal was actually talk about like how do we make decisions? Are we philosophically aligned on what we're trying to do? And some of the key things that you and I hit on is like, hey, anything under $1,500, like I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. Right.
Yeah.
I need some autonomy to actually make some decisions without having to inundate you with every single question every single day. Because you as an investor, that's what you're paying me for as a management fee, right? You don't want to get involved in all those decisions. And on top of that, we also talked about like, hey, how do we exit the property, right? Because all partnerships eventually end. And that was one of the first things you and I talked about. Like, hey, what if you want to sell and I don't want to sell? Like,
Yeah.
these are real conversations that you got to have. And obviously, you and I talked about, like, hey, our guiding principle, as long as you have these guiding principles, I think that will help you steer a lot of decisions that we need to reward each other for coming in deal. So if the house appraises for $1.5 million and doubles in price in less than 5 years, and you want to exit, I don't want to exit. I need to be able to compensate you for coming into the deal with me in the first place. And I think if you have alignment there, then it's going to make the partnership so much more fruitful because you guys have talked about this stuff. So we actually don't want to argue. The last thing I would want is for our friendship that we've had since eighth
Mhm.
grade to be ending over a business deal, over one deal. It's just not worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see it as negatives, right? But it's actually a positive to have that conversation, right? I mean, we all have friends, right? Everybody,
Mhm.
not just between you and me, but everybody else has friends that they don't really agree 100%
Mhm.
in, right? So you're never going to have that 100% kind of
Yep.
agreement with even your
Mhm.
closest friends, right? So just having that conversation, are we, your kind of term, philosophically aligned, right? Are we aligned with what we're trying to do here, right? And if not, then
Mhm.
we're still friends, and it's not like
Yeah.
there's nothing negative about it, right? Just you just have to have that conversation. I think that's a big piece of it, which is,
Mhm.
like you said,
Yeah.
having that conversation, going through the different data points.
Yeah.
What do we do when we kind of leave? What happens, if somebody decides to sell? You live a different life from me, right? You're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, right? We live different lives, right? So, and you have a kid, right? I don't have a kid,
Mhm.
a wife now, but we live different lives. We have different career trajectories. We have different timelines in our
Mhm.
life, whatever it is. So you got to have that conversation. And one of the big ones, like you said, is how do we exit, right? We're holding it for this amount of period. And
Mhm.
if you want to exit, then we're exiting, and this is what we're going to do. So just having that
Got it.
conversation, I felt like that was a big piece, a great kind of starter, right? We're just our first
Mhm.
conversation was we're just going to talk through what happens when things don't go the way it's supposed to go,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And
Have
we
all
we
that
talked through what's
conversation.
gonna happen when a
Yeah,
tornado hits. We talked through what happens when a big fire hits.
yeah,
Right? We
yeah,
talked
yeah.
through all these things. You gotta have the conversation because otherwise, when that bad case scenario comes up, which might be really rare, you already talked about it, right? So there's
Yep.
no arguments at that point in
You've
time.
already agreed. Yeah,
And I think you just got to spend the time upfront to have these conversations because like your life is going to be very different in 5 years. And that's the holding period we agreed to, right? Like, hey, we're going
mhm,
to hold this for 5 years at the minimum, and then we're going to see what happens. So like, it's just that's just a conversation that I would urge all of our listeners to kind of follow and make sure you have that conversation before investing with anybody. You have to have those conversations and those difficult ones at the very least. And the next thing I want to talk about is like you and I, we worked on a bachelorette house, right? You and I are both guys. We asked our wives and your wife now too about design considerations. And when our designer first provided our mood boards and the design plan, our friends, not just our wives, our friends had a lot of different opinions about it, right?
mhm.
And that's when I realized, like, wow, I didn't expect this conversation because this is one of the conversations that we did not have before the thing. We didn't talk about how we're going to design it, but you and I were in an agreement that when in doubt, we would invest more money to make this spot as cool as possible and as good looking as possible. And
Mhm.
I think that's so important and a general guiding principle that you must have with your partners as well. It's like, because some people might just view it as an expense, right? They're like, oh, I'm just dumping more money into it. but everything that we have invested more in has been to make the property looking better. And thank God we did, because if we didn't have a great product, we would have actually lost a lot of reservations when we had no music outdoor policy, right? We had a premium product and a great experience, and that is reflected in like our 39 5-star reviews right now. They've been all perfect, knock on wood. But
You
what was
got to lay
going
the
through your head when
foundation.
we
Yeah, you just gotta lay the foundation. You have that strong foundation, right? Which is what we did, and then that brings in the reviews, right? You like you said, right? The no music outdoor policy. They're playing music inside, right? There's still plenty of
Mhm.
activities to do inside, right?
Yep.
So just having that kind of, you're spending that money. It's an expense, but it's also an investment in kind of the
Yes.
house as well.
That's exactly right. And I love how you view the expense as an investment instead of just a pure expense. That is so important, because if you're working on your first deal and every single time the issues come up, like we probably went double over our budget, man. Like,
Mhm.
well, we thank God we made double the revenue, but it could have easily went the other way. But you and I stuck to it, and instead of like football thing where we're like, hey, let's just cut back on here a little bit, cut back a little bit here on a little bit, we might not have seen the returns that we've been able to see on our property.
Yeah.
So um, no, it's awesome, man. Like, I just want to share the numbers with the folks listening right now. I mean, we bought this property at $800,000. It was originally listed for $850,000. We put 15% down payment on the property, and then we put another 126 on the property to renovate it. We probably had about maybe another 70 grand of like credit card debt that we put in. But long story short, we were all in cash out of our pocket for about $246,000.
Mhm.
We bought this property. We closed in August, and we got it reappraised in about March or April of this year for at 1.15 million. And I still remember the day that it happened, man. Like, I called you up. I said, dude, you're a millionaire. And you didn't believe me. Remember, you didn't believe me at that point in time.
Yeah, you have to like run that calculation for me, which is funny.
Dude, I think that was one of the highlight moments of my year this year, dude. I don't think I told you that, but knowing that we both came from affordable housing, knowing we both worked so hard in college throughout life, and for you and I to both become millionaires on the same day, like that was beautiful, man. That was
It's
probably one of
great.
the most beautiful moments of the year.
Yeah, we
Like,
took a shot
absolutely.
together. I FaceTimed you. We took a shot. When you FaceTimed me, we took a shot together.
Dude, I almost had tears in my eyes that day. And it was so, you know what was the even second most amazing meal? When I told you go into the bank account and give yourself all the money back. Like that was the most beautiful. Like, I almost got tears in my eyes right now, man. Like, you know, I'm so happy. I'm so happy, and I'm so thankful and so blessed that you came into the deal with me, man. Because you
Yeah.
really could have said no, and I'm
we
never
all
gonna
we all
forget that.
started kind of the same path, right? Like you said in the beginning, immigrant parents, first generation, college graduate, first time college graduate, and now we're here. So it's what a life, right? What a life that we've lived so far, and then what a life to live in the future. But yeah, it's crazy.
What a life, man. And I want to spend some time and take the time to acknowledge our parents, right? So our parents are both immigrants. They came over here, and they all none of them spoke English, right? And to start, none of them spoke English. They grinded, they worked just to put food on the table. So I know you lived in affordable housing. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what has affordable housing done for your family and for you as well?
Yeah, I feel like, as part of this conversation, affordable housing gets a kind of a bad rap, right? Yeah, they call it the
Hmm.
hood, the projects,
Hmm.
whatever it is, right? But for people like us, right, affordable housing is a stepping stone, right? Or for immigrants, right, it's a stepping
Hmm.
stone, right? You came here with nothing, right? We have a little bit of cash in our bank, we have a rainy day fund, whatever it is.
Hmm.
A lot of our parents did not have that rainy day fund, right? They
Hmm.
got on the plane, they landed here, and then they
Hmm.
bring us saying, all your friends are gone, back home. This is where you are now, and you got to make a life for your kids. You got to, build a better life for yourself and your kids, stuff like that. So I view affordable housing as a stepping stone and a
Hmm.
great stepping stone for, if you're looking at my life, right? It's a great stepping stone because my parents was able to afford the rent, right, without paying these crazy
Hmm.
rents, being able
Hmm.
to kind of put food on the table, right? Give the kids clothes, right? Not the fancy
Hmm.
clothes, but I'm not going to school and getting bullied for my clothes. Just having, like you said, right, that grind and stuff like that without worrying about all this money. So having that affordable housing, great stepping stone, right? I have a brother, a little sister. They kind of came through the same thing as me, right?
Hmm.
My parents kind of grew up raising us in these affordable housing. So I felt like, I definitely owe a lot of who I am to that, right? I mean, if my parents had
Hmm.
to work multiple jobs, gone 24 hours a day, whatever it is,
Hmm.
right? Then I'm raising myself or I'm raising my brother, my siblings, whatever it is.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and that might lead to a different lifestyle for me, right? I might not have gone to college, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and have the lifestyle that I have now, right? So I
Yeah.
think I would say I owe a lot to affordable housing, right? That's kind of
Hmm.
where I grew up for the first, until I went to college, for the first 18 years of my life. From I was born to when I left
Hmm.
for college, and then as soon as I left for college or graduate college, right, I moved into apartment and things like that. So it kind of
Yeah.
snowballed there, but my
Hmm.
first 18 years of my life was affordable housing.
Yeah, and if it's kind of like if you never had the stability, like who knows what would happen to your family, right? If, like you said, if your parents had to work two jobs a day, when would they actually be home to like
Yeah,
hang out with you guys
yeah,
and
yeah,
spend time with you guys? And it creates a stability where you can grow up in an area where at least it's safe, for the most part, and your family has a stable home to kind of come home to. And you and I both went to really great schools because we happen to really be in a really good school district. And so
yeah,
without affordable housing, we would have never been able to do that. And for some immigrants and some lower income families, it's already hard enough, right? Trying to start a life. And that's why you and I always talk about is like the problems that we go through is like nothing compared to what our parents went through.
yeah.
Nothing. Like the problems that we face every day is like, oh, we got a final exam, like we're all complaining about it. It's like, dude, this is nothing compared to what our parents had to
Nothing.
go
Yeah,
through.
absolutely nothing. But yeah, that's the mindset, right? I mean, we look at these, the rap for these affordable housing, government subsidized housing is that they're
Mm,
like the projects of the hood. But if you
mhm,
really think about it, right, this is home for these people, right? So my parents, us, me when I
mhm,
was younger, a lot of these immigrants, a lot of these kind of low income earners, whatever
mhm,
it is home for them, right? And so as much as whoever it is, media, whatever the general
mhm.
population kind of looks at projects or whatever it is in a negative
Mhm.
light, it is home for these people, and they are going home. They are going
Yep.
back, and they feel safe in their home, and that's what it does to these people, being
Yeah.
able to go home and not having to work or worry about
Yeah.
anything else.
And that's why you and I are great examples of like what can happen to a child when they are presented an equal opportunity to succeed.
Yeah,
Right? They get a stable home and they get to be in an area where at least they have a chance. And I think all the kids, especially the kids in this world, they deserve that chance. And just look at us now. Right now, we invested in real estate. We've all quote unquote made it because we had great corporate jobs, working making six figures a year. But that's not where we want to stop. We want to continue to give back and actually give affordable housing units back to the community. And that's going to be so important, right? And and I hope this is a living example of great people like us that we grew up in affordable housing and we want to give back. And this is the type of life that people out there that want to invest in affordable housing, that's what you can provide to someone like us and the future generations. Because there's a reason we're doing this. We're doing this for social workers. We want to do affordable housing for nonprofits and EMTs so that good people can be the best version of themselves without worrying about high rent. And these people are going to in turn help our kids, our grandkids, and our great grandkids when we're not there anymore. And that is so important because that's more important than wealth. There's an average statistic out there that says, like, the average family generation or family fortune only lasts about 3 generations. And that's crazy. But what can we leave for our family? If we can help enough people and in this small world of ours, we know they're going to come back and help someone back in our future generation. And I think that's the best thing we can leave for our kids. I know you don't have a kid yet, but I can't wait, man. Once you have your kid, you're gonna feel even more and more passionate about this, man. I love it.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
so
mean that's
listen,
that's that's what it is, right? Giving back, and that's what philanthropy and philanthropy. You know what I mean? So just being able to get to give back, right? However we do, whatever we can do to kind of recognize the people that work hard, recognize where we came from, being able to give people that opportunity, right? I mean, it might not it be direct or indirect, whatever it is,
Mhm.
right? Just being able to give back gives you a good feeling, right? You sleep better at night if you knowing that you were able to help somebody. So just having that mindset of giving back and recognizing these people that work hard, I think that's a very key point to make.
No, I love it, dude. Hey, man, this is an awesome conversation. And like I told you, like we haven't had one of these one-on-ones for a really long time. And I think with after COVID and everything, it's so important that we just like cherish these moments and we spend the time with each other and have these conversations, man. It's a little bromance going on right now, but that's
It
okay.
is. It really is.
Um, I love it, man. You and I have been through a lot. I'm so glad you were able to kind of come on this podcast and have this conversation with me. It's so important to our mission that I think we had to put it out to the world and let other people hear it, no matter how little people want to hear it. It's our mission, and I think we're going to stick to it. So, Wilson, where can people find more about you? Like, are you on Instagram? Are you on LinkedIn? Where can people reach out to you if they want to learn more about you?
Man, I was telling my wife yesterday, I was like, I need to make an Instagram. I don't have one. Find me on LinkedIn,
Okay.
Wilson Bang. And then, the email is just wilson.bang@gmail.com.
Okay.
I'm going to get my Instagram at one point.
Okay. I love it. No. Hey, Wilson, thank you so much for coming on, man. Thanks for telling us the story. Thanks for sharing some advice to our listeners on how to vet investors and partners and future partners. I think our listeners going to get a lot of value out of this call. So I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for coming on. And
Yeah,
I'm
no
going to have you
problem.
back on eventually.
Yeah, anytime.